Hey everyone, welcome to the Slice of Construction podcast. I'm your host, Jared Taylor. Joining me today is the co-founder and CEO at Eyrus, Alex McManus. Alex, how are you?
Hi. Thanks for having me. This is great.
I'm excited to have you here. Let's dig right in. Let's kick things off with my most overused question. I ask everyone: you're in an Eyrus sweatshirt. Someone goes, "What does Eyrus do?" What do you tell them?
We track data and information on construction sites to make the site more efficient and to connect the worker to everything that's going on around them.
And how did you get into this space in the first place? Like, how did you decide you wanted to start this company?
That's it. So, how far back do you want to go?
Pivotal moment. Like, what was that pivotal moment
Wait.
that's like, I'm doing this?
All right. Let me a little bit of history on
Mhm.
myself. Very quickly, engineering degree. I started out in the construction industry out of college. That really liked the tangible nature of construction, right? So you're building and organizing to something that you can see, right, in the ground. Worked for somewhat of a management consulting company, a company called the Gordian Group, focused on data in the software and the construction industry to reorganize massive construction portfolios. So, kind of way early days of construction tech, before construction tech was even a term. Really enjoyed that work. Started with when the company was small, got bought and sold a couple of times. I ended up out in San Francisco. Loved the whole startup world. And so I started a separate company, totally outside of this space. And it was outside of my area of expertise. So I went in with another co-founder, more of a material science, chemistry background. And I was really itching to get back into construction. So it was really kind of poking around, seeing what we could do in construction. When I worked previously with data and software in the field, what I noticed is we were really good at managing projects into construction, like a portfolio, and then managing kind of the closeout of a project. And it was really a black hole as far as data is concerned once projects went into the field.
Hmm.
So I sat with that and said, okay, what can we do with managing projects in the field? How can we get data out of those projects? And then I was lucky enough to run into Hussein Shokami, who's my co-founder. He was very, very focused in starting a company focusing on the data and pulling data out of the field. So we kind of got together, looked at how can we create visibility onto the construction site, and our first and foremost focus was the workforce. So we started kicking some ideas around kind of in that area.
Why was that the initial focus? Not as a negative, just curious.
Yeah, I think, I mean, our viewpoint was, and actually still was, that anything that happens on the construction site is going to involve the worker, right? I mean, that is the nature of construction. I think that's why at least we were drawn to it. That's why I was drawn to it is, right, it's such a tangible effort and it's such a controlled chaos of a lot of different individuals coming together to build usually something that's pretty amazing in the end. And knowing who's there on site, who they're working for, what they're doing, not only kind of helps pull data out to the project as a whole, but also makes the worker safer, right? So kind of creating that transparency and accountability works on both sides, makes the project more efficient, helps the worker be safer and more effective.
So I just got back recently from, I went to my first Blueprint conference, which is still more prop tech, but there was some content companies there as well. And every conversation seemed to really revolve around AI.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear, because obviously, you're collecting data on these construction sites, um, how you're leveraging AI. And then also, in leveraging AI, like, talk me through a little bit of something you and I talked about this earlier that no one talks about, the use of sample data to get started, or testing data
Yeah.
before implementing the real data. So kind of two-part question.
Yeah. So AI is interesting, right? Because I think the world is maybe in the infancy of AI, and then construction tech is somewhere behind that, right? Just so with the adoption of technology on the construction sites tend to lag the other markets. So is AI. And part of that is something we are been trying to work on and solve for a while. It's the lack of unified data, right? So having unified data across your projects, right? And then using that across, right, areas and regions so you can make sense of a data set. So that's something we focus on quite a bit at Eyrus, is gathering the right data and making kind of collecting data that fits the right project size. And then when you get into the world of AI, then we have to figure out the best use cases for that data. So there's some very practical use cases, I think, that are kind of almost off the shelf ready for the construction market. And then I think there's some where if we really focus together as an industry, we can make some leaps and bounds as far as scheduling and forecasting and using some of the technology from other industries in construction, right? But in order to use AI appropriately, you have to have a good data set. So you asked about using off the shelf kind of data. I think it's incredibly important because the construction industry is behind. So one very quick example, we do computer vision on sites. We use that for a lot of different use cases. But computer vision immediately enables AI. Everybody uses it already today, whether they know it or not. If you have a Ring camera at your house and it tells you when somebody's at your door, right? All right, so that's just a basic version of AI. So we've started using it for just PPE detection. Very simple use case. We have a camera there. We're using it maybe for security. We're layering it in with access control. But you can also use it for detecting whether people have the appropriate PPE on. Now, in order to create that, we actually use an off-the-shelf open source data set, right, as a starting point. So as a company, and actually as an industry, it gets us a lot faster, right? So those are images available already, right, that you can train your model on, that whether somebody has the right helmet or vest on, right, and having the computer vision recognize those items. So we were able to make kind of massive leaps and bounds in our AI model using that test sample. And then we can feed in project specific information. Now, within construction, I mean, I think it's like everything but construction special, right? Everybody's going to say that about their market. So then you have to take the real life use cases of the construction site and the kind of computer clips from there to further train and refine a model. PPE's somewhat simple, but then if we're going to get into computer vision to recognize safety infractions, unsafe behaviors, right? People being too close to something, right? Then you're going to want to start with that model and kind of sample data, but then really, really train a model specific to what's happening on a construction site. Because they're really very dynamic and potentially dangerous environments, right? So you got to be aware of that.
Why do you think it might just be an oversight, but so many companies need to leverage this training data to get things rolling, right? Like it'll slow you up if you're not. But I feel like not many people talk about it. Is it because like just the general population like doesn't understand what training data is? Like I'm really curious from your point of view. It seems like not many people that I know that are training their models with training data. Like, is it just an oversight?
In the construction world, maybe to me a little bit, it's a chicken and the egg situation where I think there has to be a kind of group understanding that the value that AI can provide. So what we've been trying to do as a company is, and we just did a workshop on this, is present practical AI solutions. Right. And if they can see, right, so it's not this highfalutin idea that's only going to solve the world's problems. It's a practical way to get basic information to help manage your construction site, connect the workers. And then knowing that you have that practical solution available to you, then being able to say, okay, how do we create that? And that's going back to the models. So, I mean, part of it might be lack of kind of knowledge, but also part of it is maybe we don't need that AI seems too complicated, too complex, or not necessary right now to even start through the process of training the models. Where I project that with the right unified data sets, AI can move the industry forward very, very quickly once it's kind of embraced.
in the construction space, we can think broadly here. Like, what barriers, like what blockers are you still seeing that these firms have to there's still a lot, right? So like
Yeah.
that they need to go
So
by.
I I call it kind of contracting friction, right? I mean, it's construction contracting, and actually, I was just at a conference speaking with some of the kind of VDCs or tech folks within construction, and they see this as an issue as well. So I don't think I'm just speaking from a vendor perspective, but there is what makes sense for a project and what makes sense, and that kind of calculus might be slightly different than what makes sense for the construction company, right? And so those two things, in order to really move forward technology and to get good data, have to align, right? And then it's, right, from a vendor perspective, we're coming in and we provide a lot of value, but maybe we're put in a low bid situation, which creates a very much contracting friction. So you're putting technology in low bid, where what you really need to do is elevate it up to unify it across projects. But that's because of the way the industry is kind of fragmented and decentralized, and the P&L put on projects, right? Those are things that just kind of have to sort the way through. Being ever optimistic and an entrepreneur, I do think that, and I don't want to harp on AI, but it's a term people really gravitate towards, the ability that we're going to have to move information faster in the industry is going to push, I think, construction companies to unify their technology options. That's my hope, and I think that will move the industry forward faster.
I mean, my favorite use case for AI in general is how much it simplifies unstructured data, right? Where the
Yeah.
unstructured data in the past, like it could make so many, not just in construction, in any industry, but like in construction as well. It could just take so much time to sift through that unstructured
Right.
data. And now the fact that we can just like ask questions, and it really took so many parts of, like, if you mapped out the whole construction landscape, now all of a sudden you can kind of cherry pick certain parts of like any of the flow from, like, you're starting to see it with these like pre-construction platforms, right? And now with what
Yeah.
you're doing, it allows us to think about how we do things fundamentally just on a different level, which is so exciting, right? Scary also, but more so exciting.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, let's just say from a safety perspective, right? I
Mhm.
guess I think that drives a lot of interest to put technology on construction sites. When you're uh, AI isn't any different. I always like to say it's not right than the human brain, right? So you're pulling different information threads together. So Irish, we try to put a lot of that data in front of you in a dashboard, but then you're you're creating an understanding of that data faster than you otherwise would. Right. And so you can see very quickly and then be alerted to overcrowding issues on a site, fatigue issues with a workforce, trade consistency issues, meaning workers are being changed around faster. All that information is there, but not as an individual, you can't be watching everything in running those calculations right all the time. So you have the right platform, the right data set, it can pull that information to you in a very quick manner, and that's really going to enable everybody to be proactive. So not only from the safety, but if you don't have the right workforce there, right, organizing, or you don't have the right piece of equipment for the next stage of construction, you're going to be alerted to that, right, before you walk down to that part of the site and realize you're unprepared. So it really should make everybody's day easier.
Absolutely. What's next for Iris? Like, what is on your radar as we head into, which is scary to say, but we are almost done with 2024 and heading into 2025. What's next? What's top of mind for you?
So for us, as with our platform, we've really created functionality that enables kind of layered data collection. Right. So if I'm working on a small renovation project, my kind of cost to operational needs considerations is different than I'm working on a large, large data center, hyperscale data center. right? So we have enabled our platform to be able to collect data and provide information back, whether you're working on a small renovation project. We do a lot of hyperscale data centers or hospitals or those large kind of forever projects. And then enabling a company to couple that data across their projects to really have insight as to not only connected work sites, but we're kind of connecting the work sites to each other. So if I have a piece of equipment over here and I need it on the next work site, you know what's available and what's not, right? If I have a workforce that kind of I have too many workers on this site, right? You know the area where you can bring them to next, right? So once you connect all this information together, anyway, it's going to be a beautiful world of data and efficiency.
I love it. Before we have you go, Alex, what's a piece of advice for the new contact founders trying to break into, not specifically your space, right, but just into construction in general?
It helps to know construction. So I think if very, very strongly believe this, if they bring, like, wouldn't this technology be great in this industry if they don't have experience in the construction industry themselves, to bring in a founder that does? And that experience goes a long way to understanding and how to operate with the different stakeholders in the industry.
Yeah, without the domain expertise, like I saw the same thing in healthcare, right? Like we see all these tech founders come in and say, we're going to disrupt healthcare, we're going to disrupt construction. And it usually doesn't pan out that great because without that domain expertise. Now, if they have a co-founder that does have the expertise, they can probably play off each other really well, right? But you're right. If you don't have that expertise in the construction space, good luck getting a company off the ground and knowing how to speak the language alone, right?
Yeah, and just the difficulties that you're going to run into, I think very similar probably to healthcare, right? On site, right, or in a company. So I won't share their name, but one of the very big tech companies, right, that we may do work with hyperscale data centers on. That we early on have been working with them for a long time. We were trying to figure out the best way to collect and understand and use information on site, and they embraced computer vision very early. And we said that's not going to be the best way. So we use it, but it's not the best way to collect information to really understand, right, what's happening on your construction site. So we use a lot of other IoT, just NFC, BLE. This was probably 7 years ago. We've been working with them for a long time. They came back to us and they're like, "You are 100% right." Although we just started doing computer vision, it will never do what they think it's going to do, right? It might work for other industries, but it won't. And they said, okay, tell us what IoT works. Right? And it's not always the most sophisticated piece of new technology, right? You have to meet the needs of the site, the ruggedness, operational requirements. So there's a big thing for me in construction. People on the construction site are busy building buildings. They are not managing technology. Right. So you can't put out on site and think it's going to be effective, the kind of the bleeding edge of technology, right? Because it's going to be too finicky. It's going to be operationally difficult. So, knowing and testing out what you're doing before you put on a construction site, I think will make everybody happy.
It must feel good when you're like, because like you're right. When they come to you and say, oh, yeah. That's what I always say is if I had long hair like you, that would be the hair. What's the hair flip moment?
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Like,
there you go.
There you go. So maybe I get a wig and I start doing that for a segment. Anyway, Alex, thank you so much for joining us here today. I look forward to future conversations. Well, maybe we'll get you on a panel or something. We can talk some more, but appreciate you joining us here today.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. This was great. Thank you.